From denying the existence of space to secret JFK files, here are the most ridiculous claims ever made on Joe Rogan podcast. Number 10. Eddie Bravo and Joe Rogan on Statue of Liberty. This first podcast starts with Eddie Bravo and Joe Rogan talking about satanic rituals and how the Christ has already lived through his promised years, and this is the time after his reign. Joe Rogan disagrees with the theory, suggesting that if Christ was resurrected, there has to be a record of it, because there sure are records of Christ sacrificing himself, but there's no record of the resurrection in the books.
This theory posits it's all already happened. We're not living in the times just before tribulation. We're living after the 1,000-year reign of Christ. He's already been on earth. He has reigned for 1,000 years on earth with his resurrected saints and the elect who survived through tribulation.
Wouldn't there be a record of that?
And
doesn't it make sense that Christians would document that?
And then Eddie Bravo throws in his wildest conspiracy theories ever about the Statue of Liberty being, wait for it, a satanic monument. First off, Eddie introduces this insane idea by pointing out some mysterious painting of Lucifer. He dramatically claims that the devil depicted there somehow bears an uncanny resemblance to the Statue of Liberty. Of course, he backs this up with the most compelling proof of all, a shackle and broken chain around the statue's ankle. To Eddie, this wasn't merely symbolic of freedom from oppression. It had to be a sinister nod to Satan himself.
There's a painting of Lucifer, and he looks just like the fucking Statue of Liberty, and he's got a chain, like a shackle around his ankle with a broken chain, and it's a famous painting of Lucifer, and he's like this, right? And then you look at the Statue of Liberty, that's not a woman, that's a dude. And it's got a shackle around its
I thought it was a strong
ankle
chick.
with a broken chain.
The Statue of Liberty has a shackle around its ankle?
As Joe Rogan pulls up a side-by-side image of Lucifer's portrait and the statue's foot, Eddie Bravo gets ridiculously excited. He insists that the statue looks exactly like Lucifer's depiction, right down to the suspiciously broken chain. Meanwhile, Joe Rogan is unsure whether he's listening to a wild revelation or just witnessing Eddie lose his mind in real time. Because let's be real, this is a very ridiculous claim based on just a chain.
Look at that right there, boom,
Whoa.
look at that.
Wow.
Look at that, that's the foot of the Statue of Liberty, broken chain with a shackle.
But Satan has two arms up in the air.
Yeah.
It's basically...
No, I don't know. This is just crazy conspiracy
The
talk.
chain
This
is
Really
weird.
identical.
It's
This is crazy
basically
shit.
the Elon Musk. My heart goes out to you.
Yo, I'm going to say this. Dude, Jesus
That
is
is going to be still
Lord.
framed somewhere on that.
I'm all
on
in,
CNN.
dude. I'm all in.
Then Joe Rogan gets involved in the conspiracy too, because clearly he's intrigued. He starts suggesting that there's no way the Statue of Liberty is a woman. He thinks so because there are very obvious muscles and a bigger build, which means she could be a man. But then they point out that the statue also has a very obvious chest, after which they start discussing the possibility of the Statue of Liberty being a trans statue. And this is not even the end of this discussion. By their logic, America has unknowingly been worshiping a giant metal representation of Lucifer, masquerading as a gender-ambiguous figure for over a century. This is as ridiculous as it gets.
I mean, they modeled it off
Yeah.
of something. They didn't just create it out of thin air usually, too.
You think that's a chick?
No chicks have that big ass bicep.
It does.
before.
The Statue of Liberty, the arm is huge. Look at
Yeah.
that forearm. That's a jacked forearm.
The hands.
Yeah, it's a dude's hand, a dude's arm, dude's face,
Dude's nose.
dude's nose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Statue of Liberty doesn't look like a guy, but it does look like it kind of has boobs.
And he's holding up
A torch.
Then they start joking about how someone probably gave Statue of Liberty implants. Now, this might come off as a joke, but it's a well-known conspiracy theory that a lot of people believe this statue is a symbol of the devil.
Is there boobs in the Statue of Liberty?
Illumination.
Like legit boobs? So get a full view of the Statue of Liberty.
She cheeked up.
Did they give her some implants later in the
on
day?
a Thursday afternoon.
Did they pump out the copper? Did they get under the copper and heat it up?
Yeah,
and push
I've never
it out
seen
a
it
little bit?
close up, man.
Yeah, I've never seen the boobs.
The thing does look trans now that we look at it.
Now that you look at it.
But even this episode won't sound as ridiculous to you when you see this next one. Number 9. Dr. Brian Keating and Joe Rogan on Newton's insanity. So in this next podcast, Dr. Brian Keating, a very famous cosmologist, said something that literally divided the scientific world. He was talking about Newton and how big of a genius he is in the Joe Rogan podcast when he suddenly switched lanes and started suggesting that Newton was egoistic and even had imposter syndrome. Now, this is something no one can confirm because obviously people didn't know about these syndromes back in the day, so there's no record. Brian also starts talking about how Newton was arrogant and egoistic, but he has zero proof for what he's saying, which just makes his entire observation laughable. Brian also goes on to accuse Newton of torturing people when he was warden of the Mint, but research suggests he wasn't directly involved in the executions. Even Joe Rogan is surprised at this point because Brian is just being ridiculous.
Newton had the imposter syndrome. He said, "You're kidding me, Newton." He was like, because Newton was kind of a prick. Newton had a huge ego. He was not kind to his friends. He tortured people as the master of the Mint, or he had them tortured.
Tortured people?
Yeah, he was
Physically tortured people?
He was responsible. He was like he was responsible for the equivalent of the IRS in England. So people would cheat. They would scrape down pennies.
That's right.
Yeah.
I've read
He was the
this.
master of the Mint.
Dr. Brian Keating then goes on to talk about Newton dying a virgin because he wanted to be like Jesus Christ. So he decided to not get married and didn't even have relations with a woman. At this point, Joe Rogan is actually surprised.
He died a virgin.
Yeah, that was a weird one, right? Yeah, I was
Yes.
going to bring that up. He was celibate.
You know why?
Why?
Because there's only one way that he could emulate his hero, the person before whom he felt the imposter syndrome. And who was that? That was Jesus Christ.
Oh, boy.
So he wanted to be Christ-like. He wanted to emulate Christ. And the only way he could do it, he couldn't fast or I don't know.
Then they actually agree that Newton was insane just because when he was 15, he didn't fool around with a bunch of girls or did stuff that teenagers nowadays are doing. What both Joe Rogan and Brian don't realize is that people back in the day studied religion from a very early age, and Newton was really sharp. So he probably wanted to keep all of his energies dedicated to science.
Are you sure he just was like an excuse for he didn't like...
I don't know.
I mean, it sounds nutty. Because, how do you figure that
He's
out
a
when you're
handsome
like
guy.
14, 15 years old? You know, you're young and full of hormones, and you've made this decision to be like Jesus?
Yeah.
He sounds insane.
He definitely was. He was not like
But
Galileo.
obviously-
You would want to hang out with Galileo. If
I
you
don't know,
met
I probably
Galileo...
want to hang out with him, too.
Yeah.
And if you think this was borderline embarrassing, well, brace yourself for this next one. Number 8, Terrance Howard and Joe Rogan on black holes. The guest in this episode was Terrance Howard, and when Terrance talks, it's either ridiculous or outrageous. So this time, he came to the Joe Rogan podcast with this out-of-the-world theory that black holes don't exist. And even his explanation for believing so is embarrassing to say the least.
Black holes came from the thought of gravity going crazy. When gravity goes crazy, light won't even be able to escape from it because light was thought as moving as a particular
Right.
constant. We've just killed that.
What do you think a black hole is?
It doesn't exist. There aren't black holes. There's no spot.
Terrance then talks about how there's no place in the universe where light just gets trapped and never comes out. So he basically negates all the research papers, scientific findings, and even the latest photos released by NASA. He keeps on talking about how it's ridiculous to believe that the universe behaves this way and that black holes are not real. Scientists just made them up.
Where where energy goes in and never comes back out. There's no place in the universe where the information paradox occurs, where there isn't a balance. Something gets contracted and never comes out. That's not how the universe behaves. It comes in and it goes out. When Newton said that
Joe Rogan has had enough at this point, so he decides to question Terrance's logic. Joe asks him what his thoughts are on NASA's findings, because clearly they've detected black holes in space. Joe also talks about the vortices and how there's no other explanation of them existing other than black holes.
So what do you think they're detecting when they're detecting black holes?
what that shift that they're talking about, that's the tornado. Remember, there's a vortice. There's all these huge vortices. Everything is spinning around a vortice. So a collection of larger vortices is going to have the same thing that's happening at the center of the galaxy.
Then Terrance starts raising questions on the math itself, suggesting that they're calculating their equations wrong, which is why they think black holes exist. He also goes on to argue that the concept of gravity and event horizon aren't understood properly. So this man is single-handedly challenging the entire scientific community, and what's funny is that he has no evidence and has probably done zero research before making these big claims.
Because of the concept of this event horizon, this super point of gravity, this infinite point that light can't even escape, that this exists because of the
their
theory
math
of gravity.
and their math. Remember,
Yeah.
they have a thing called zero. They go from 1 to 0 to
Right.
-1.
But Joe Rogan is intrigued because he wants to know more and see how ridiculous Terrance can make his theory. So Joe asks him about the final destinations of the stars, because everyone thinks that when stars die, they're sucked by the black hole. But if black holes don't exist, where does everything go in space?
What happens to these suns when they supernova?
Everything gets old and die.
Everything gets old and die. And does everything recompress?
Has to. And you breathe out, what happens to that air? Another plant breathes that air in.
So would this be the universe itself? Would it be galaxies? Would it be...
Everything behaves the same way.
Terrance responds to this by suggesting that there's a balance in the universe, and they've ruined the concept of it by lying about the existence of black holes.
It's a balance, and it's never been anything but that balance, and we've complicated it with a lie.
Joe Rogan is really amused by Terrance, so at this point, he takes the leap and asks him if he thinks all the scientists who believe in black holes are wrong. At this point, Terrance actually agrees and says that they're wrong because they haven't achieved half as much as he has. And while he's at it, Terrance also starts boasting about his patents and achievements.
If you're right, so many people are wrong.
Everyone's wrong. Oh, well, the universe backs me up, and I have the proof of it. You have all these physicists that's saying something different, but none of them have 97 patents. None of them have introduced a new form of flight with unlimited mid-air bonding.
Terrance also says that no other scientist believes that the black hole theory is wrong because they're all following the same thing and not opening themselves up to the possibility of anything else being true. He believes that he opened his heart. Some spirit guided him, and that's why he's able to understand this matter better than the physicists out there.
This is what we've done. This is what the collective is able to do when you put yourself into the divine space. Because that spirit is waiting. It's just like, okay, are you going to make yourself available for it?
If this isn't ridiculous, I honestly don't know what is. But when you see this next theory, you'd probably start questioning everything. Number 7, Jeff Dye and Joe Rogan on Bigfoot. Let's talk about the time Jeff Dye went on Joe Rogan's podcast and revealed his lifelong obsession with Bigfoot, desperately trying to convince Joe that the hairy legend might actually be out there hiding in the woods. But Joe wasn't having any of it, and honestly, Jeff should have seen this coming. Jeff Dye started off confidently, reminding Joe how dismissive he'd once been, saying hunters never spot Bigfoot, which made him doubt its existence.
You said it's... I remember you one time going, there's nothing out there. Yeah, didn't you say that about
Hunters
Bigfoot?
don't see it. That's why I don't believe in it.
Some hunters do.
No, not many.
People that see it are usually loggers, hunters, natives, people that are out in the woods.
There's another problem. Another problem is dusk. You see things at dusk or at dawn. It's very confusing.
Mm-hmm.
Bears walk on 2 legs all the time.
But Joe quickly countered with a painfully simple explanation. Maybe people just see bears walking on 2 legs at dusk or dawn. Joe even admitted he'd seen bears upright himself, implying it'd be easy to mistake one for Bigfoot. And you could feel Jeff slowly losing ground.
I have personally watched bears walk on 2 legs, and if I didn't know any better, and if it was a dark environment, like it was dusk, you barely can see, I would think it's Bigfoot.
Right.
Yeah.
Then Jeff made things worse by claiming there might be hundreds, possibly thousands, of Bigfoot secretly living in caves, you could almost hear Joe rolling his eyes as he pointed out the obvious flaw. How would something that huge find enough food without constantly grazing?
I think they're still around. I think there's hundreds, maybe thousands of them. That's what I believe. I think they're in caves or something. Or maybe it's...
You know what the problem with that is?
What?
They're too big. The amount of food that they would need to eat,
Yeah.
you'd have to be grazing all day long. See, if you're Bigfoot,
Posted in the Journal of Zoology this month.
if it's there, could it be a bear?
At this point, Jeff Dye was desperately grasping at straws, mentioning a recent zoology article that suggested Bigfoot sightings might just be American black bears. Jeff argued even kids could tell a bear from a monkey, but Joe immediately shut him down, explaining how easily your brain plays tricks when you're panicking in the woods.
They're saying it's black bear, American black bear.
Yeah, American black bear that stands up.
But even
Yeah,
little
that's what I'm
kids
saying.
Yeah.
would know the difference between a monkey and a bear.
No. First of all, let me tell you something. If you're in the woods and you're in a heightened state because you're looking around, you don't know what's out there. It's all thick woods. It's weird. Woods are weird.
Yeah.
And you see something, you could trick your brain. I saw a squirrel, and for like 2 or 3 seconds, I thought it was a wolf.
Joe even shared an embarrassing story about once mistaking a squirrel for a wolf in Canada, emphasizing how fear and poor visibility can make anyone see monsters in shadows. If Joe could confuse a squirrel for a wolf, maybe Jeff's Bigfoot witnesses weren't exactly reliable.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
That's
like,
real.
wolf?
That's real
It's like,
between here.
I'm seeing something moving in between thick trees, and I see gray fur. I'm like, oh my God, is that a wolf?
Yeah.
Because there's wolves out there.
Right.
I'm in Canada. I'm like, oh no, it's a squirrel. What the f is wrong with me?
Realizing he was losing badly, Jeff Dye admitted how defeated he felt, begging Joe to throw him a bone and at least acknowledge some possibility of Bigfoot existing. But Joe instead told a joke that brutally highlighted the absurdity of Bigfoot hunting.
You just freak.
Yeah.
And maybe for a brief moment, you can see something that's been there all along.
You know how defeated I am right now. I just want you to tell
Bigfoot?
me, like, dude, there's some
I wanna
crazy,
believe in
crazy
Bigfoot.
stuff out there.
I've interviewed a lot of Bigfoot people.
Yeah.
I had one joke I used to do about Bigfoot. Here's what you don't find when you go looking for Bigfoot. Black people.
Jeff then started complaining about the more frustrating parts of Bigfoot fandom, particularly when believers start dragging in supernatural explanations from Native American folklore. Jeff admitted this ruins the already shaky credibility he's trying to build about Bigfoot simply being a hidden ape. Even he knows magic flying Bigfoots are a hard sell.
I will say that that's like the most frustrating part about the Bigfoot subject is you got guys like who really like, no, I think an ape could, like a pod of apes could like live out here and this thing. And so you'll start to, guys like me will be like, yeah, this makes good sense. And then they'll get like a Native American to talk about it. And he'll be like, it's the magic man of the woods. And you're like, no. And like he disappears. He flies. He can stop the rain.
Surprisingly, Joe then entertained the possibility that Bigfoot sightings could be related to altered states of consciousness, like psychedelic experiences, claiming maybe these visions occur under high stress. Jeff briefly got hopeful again, but Joe quickly clarified he wasn't really sold on the idea. It was just technically possible.
That you could see something that you would not be able to see under normal conditions. It's not outside the realm of possibility. I'm not married to it, but it's not outside the realm of possibility. Now, if that is what we're seeing with UFOs, if what we're seeing is our future, if what we're seeing with those beings is the eventual shape that human beings will take as evolution progresses, we become these genderless.
Joe doubled down, explaining that people in isolated areas might be psychologically primed to imagine encounters with monsters. After all, out in the woods, with bears and mountain lions lurking, even a weird shadow might become Bigfoot in your terrified mind.
Okay, people are in a heightened state. They're in the woods. They're alone. They're nervous.
Yeah.
There's cats out there. Bears. So you're kind of freaking out already. So
Right.
You're in this like weird mind state already where it seems like more things are possible out there because there's no one to help you.
Right.
There's no city. There's no hospital.
Can't call the cops on a Bigfoot.
You got no cell phone signal.
Jeff still didn't quit, desperately bringing up eyewitness accounts where Bigfoot seemingly vanished behind trees, arguing something so large would surely emerge on the other side. Joe, sensing victory again, calmly replied that these sightings could easily be more panicked misidentifications of bears.
Interesting stories that you'll just read about, like a thing just walking behind the tree, and it's not. But if it was a massive, 10-foot thing, you know, you'd probably be able to see it come out on the other side of that tree. And you see a lot of those kind of, or I read a lot of those kind of stories, and I'm like, I don't know what the heck that.
Yeah.
At this stage, even Jeff conceded a little, admitting reluctantly that these sightings could indeed be scared campers freaking out over normal wildlife. Joe then hammered home his point, insisting that seeing a bear at night between trees is more than enough to trick your brain into seeing Bigfoot.
It could be that, but it could also be black bears. It could be they're just seeing things because they're freaking out.
Yeah.
Bears freak you out, man. You see a bear in the wild, it freaks you out. And if you see a bear in between trees, you can just convince yourself that it's something, and then your brain plays tricks on you. The memory is a slippery.
Yeah, I know.
Especially under heightened circumstances like that, like in the woods. Your memory's weird.
But even Jeff's Bigfoot theory isn't half as ridiculous as this next one. Number 6, Alex Jones and Joe Rogan on alien communication. Let's talk about the time Alex Jones showed up on Joe Rogan's podcast and started dropping his most outrageous conspiracy: aliens controlling humanity through psychic manipulation, Nazis, and secret government experiments. Alex Jones jumped right in, saying humans are basically antennas connecting psychically with aliens across multiple dimensions. Before Joe Rogan even had a chance to process what he was hearing, Alex already doubled down.
I'm telling you, Joe, this is a real deal.
I believe you.
This is, you ask, who are they? It's people who are psychically, genetically available to interface in this incredibly diverse universe with all these dimensions above and below and all around us with consciousnesses. And the truth is, no energy is ever destroyed. It all continues on. The truth is, our bodies, this is a fact.
Alex quickly escalated the madness, insisting that ancient cultures, from the Egyptians to the Druids, had regular encounters with good and evil entities. He described these evil beings as elf-like creatures with horns, casually claiming people had been talking with them for thousands of years like it's common knowledge.
I never bought into this, looked into it. But then I began to think about, what did I hear when I was a kid? What did I see? What was coming out in government documents? What was being admitted? When I read all these books about World War II and the Nazis and Hitler obsessed with the Dalai Lama and the Tibetans and what they were able to do without drugs to interface with this, and all the rituals they would do and how they would believe that beyond the ether.
But then Alex got darker, explaining how Nazis got mixed up with these alien creatures. According to Alex, Hitler's occult practices actually summoned lower dimensional entities pretending to be seductive women, guiding them toward world domination. Joe Rogan sat there clueless as Alex passionately laid out the most absurd backstory imaginable.
But then the devil masquerades as an angel of light. So we're on this planet, the third dimension, which is a launch pad to all the other dimensions below and above. The third dimension, all the mathematics shows, is the primal sea of where all this happens. And the Earth's like an egg, and we've got all this potentiality. And God will send out a transmission for a larger plan, but evil's willing to come in. And what does it say? Demoralize, get rid of children, don't have kids, humans are bad.
Things took an even stranger turn when Alex tried convincing Joe that the Nazis weren't just evil. They were chosen psychically by interdimensional entities for their superior intelligence and robotic discipline. Joe's skepticism was already visible, but Alex confidently kept pushing his bizarre Nazi alien narrative without missing a beat.
And it was all about their power and how great they were going to be. And the Germans were seduced. And they were seduced because they had high IQs, but more than that, they were psychically connected to each other and would work like robots. The Chinese and the EU want robots to replace us because they'll follow orders. And the Chinese are very conscious when they're conscious, but they're also very robotic. But the Germans are just as robotic. So this entity system picked Germans as its attempt.
At this point, Alex Jones had completely lost Joe. But he wasn't done yet. He went deeper, claiming these mysterious entities were playing entire nations against each other by offering Germans advanced alien technology and controlling the British with mind games. Joe Rogan tried hard not to laugh, clearly struggling to keep a straight face.
Germans. And so whoever these players are, and you can dial into it, it's very dangerous. They're manipulating the British arm versus the German arm, and then they've got the Chinese arm that's almost seen as like their robot army. And so when you study it, the globalists go to these events and they take bigger and bigger doses of drugs. They do electroshock.
But just when you thought Alex couldn't possibly outdo himself, he claimed virtual reality technology from the 1960s was so advanced it must have come directly from aliens. Eddie Bravo jumped in jokingly, suggesting aliens had even infiltrated Samsung, making Joe throw his hands up in disbelief.
The founder of JPL, Jack Parsons. Have you heard this before?
No, I just can't believe I didn't want to have Alex on the podcast.
No, but have you ever heard that
Let me
before?
finish.
Have you
Let
ever
me
heard
finish.
that?
Just let me say this.
No.
I'm not trying to take over, but it's 2 years ago. But I'm not you. Okay, I'm telling you this stuff. I don't believe in this. Okay,
There it is, right there.
This was patented in 1957. It's a VR machine.
Exactly. No.
So you've seen these foldable phones?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the aliens have already taken over Samsung and Huawei.
Yeah.
See
No, they're
that
dialed
shit?
in.
So
the point is,
do you think the aliens are taking over Samsung? Do they have something to do with Samsung?
well, obviously, that's what I'm telling you is the Pentagon isn't worried about
What is
astronauts.
all this, Jamie?
This is the patent.
And notice that's the we said the 60s.
I believe 1957.
So notice that's exactly.
Alex kept going, getting almost aggressive with his conviction, saying secret scientists would literally shut down people's hearts temporarily to induce alien communication through psychedelic experiences. This was apparently happening at prestigious universities, according to Alex, making Joe lean in and demand clarification for such an extreme claim.
So you think it's some sort of alien intervention type?
Dude, they to get even deeper, they turn your heart off for 5 minutes and they pump oxygen into your blood. And you're in the meetings. I've talked to people that are involved, I mean, top scientists. And you're in the meetings with frickin' aliens. Elves is the main group. But they're like.
Then Alex casually admitted that government scientists deep into psychedelic experiments regularly contacted beings known simply as elves, who gave explicit instructions to drastically reduce Earth's population. Joe, visibly confused, pressed Alex to explain exactly why aliens would even suggest something so disturbing.
When you've taken DMT or ayahuasca 200 times, like most are astronauts and test pilots aren't flying planes. Those are robots now. It's all mind war. So these dudes are like, it stops working once you've taken it hundreds of times. So then they start taking their most psychic people who are able to do this and they turn their heart off. And then they put them into these events and it's like the things the aliens tell them.
Now Alex brought it closer to home, claiming he personally overheard family friends connected to CIA research talking openly about these alien elves secretly running human society. He genuinely seemed convinced these elves dictated humanity's fate, leaving Joe completely speechless.
It's really a CIA deal, and we just can't find people that can handle it. They're going in, the elves want this, and the elves want us to basically reduce population and agree to these certain plans, and it's all of us dehumanization. And they call them the elves. It's the clockwork elves. And they're like, yeah, and I'm listening to my parents, you're like 7, 8 years old, like they don't think you're listening, talking about, well, this is what the elves want, and this is what they're going to do.
The conversation got wild again when Alex accused top Silicon Valley executives, including those running Google and Apple, of using alien-inspired substances to enhance their powers. He claimed that these tech giants were under alien influence, which made Joe almost lose it, openly questioning how Alex could believe something so absurd without real evidence.
Apple, he's on TV. Tim Cook and his eyes are this big under lights, man. These guys are on stuff that like nobody even knows.
What do you think they're on?
Stuff they've been given. I mean, I know people at UT. They won't tell me specifically, but I was telling
the dude who owns YouTube. Who's that guy? What's his name? The guy
Maybe
who
it's a
owns
girl.
YouTube.
You pig.
No, nobody owns Google.
Him.
Joe tried regaining control by questioning Alex's wildest claim that Google was intentionally manipulating reality under alien instructions. Alex, unfazed by Joe's skepticism, insisted that the search giant was absolutely influenced by entities beyond our dimension, pushing Joe to ask directly for concrete proof.
Prophet. And Sundar's like, yes, it is true. We have never controlled the search result, and I'm just listening to pure lies. Meanwhile, this guy's only the front guy of Eric Schmidt, and God knows what they're into.
Has it been proven that Google does something to alter search results?
Joe asked him straight up if there was any legitimate evidence Google was actually part of an alien conspiracy. Alex confidently stuck to his story, claiming that tech companies were absolutely hiding their extraterrestrial connections, something Joe found impossible to believe without concrete evidence.
I'm asking because I don't know. I'm not asking to f with you.
Yeah, no.
What did they do?
Google itself is about if you pay them, they put your results at the top. Just like Facebook.
Okay, well, that's definitely altering search results. So what he said was not true. If you can pay...
It's like saying water ain't wet, Joe. I know you know all this stuff.
No, I don't know that. I don't know that. No, listen, I'm honest about what I don't know.
At this point, it's pretty obvious that Alex Jones was kidding himself and everyone else. But just when you think it couldn't get any worse than this, it gets wilder. Number 5, Eddie Bravo and Joe Rogan on space is fake. So it all started when Eddie Bravo came to Joe Rogan's podcast and started dropping the craziest conspiracy yet. That outer space doesn't even exist, and everything NASA tells us is fake. And yes, it gets even more ridiculous from here. As soon as Joe asked Eddie for just one reason to believe the Earth is flat or space is fake, Eddie instantly knew he was in trouble, admitting he'd probably need a year and a half to explain it all.
Jokey.
Convince me that it's flat.
There's no way I could do that.
God, really? There's not one example?
It takes about a year and a half of like one.
Year and a half? That's too much.
Very hard. The indoctrination's so strong. You look at your son's cartoons, it's all space. I look at all the my son likes. His everything is there taking space.
I'm doing
Wars.
research on this currently.
Space.
I want to direct everyone to hashtag space is fake.
Then, Eddie tried explaining his theory by claiming NASA's entire narrative about space is fake. Joe immediately shot back, asking Eddie directly why NASA would even bother lying about something so enormous. Eddie fumbled through vague explanations about secret global agendas, leaving Joe clearly confused and skeptical.
So
the
when people say
sun?
space
Wait a
is
minute.
fake,
What about the sun?
They mean all the information we're getting, you're lying about that. It's not that it doesn't exist. Of course it exists. We see it.
Right, of course.
But space is fake sounds ridiculous. Like
There's something
we're
up
looking
there.
at it and it's fake. That's ridiculous. That's
just
not what
the
it means. It
Truman
means
Show.
that all the information we got about all
We're
those
off.
lights in the sky.
Yeah.
Joe pushed Eddie further, demanding some actual evidence or reasoning behind this massive deception. Eddie then revealed his bizarre idea. The only reason anyone would fake space was to prepare humanity for a fake alien invasion. He argued that the government was getting ready to stage an extraterrestrial attack to usher in a one-world government, completely serious about this idea.
They're lying to
NASA's
us. They're lying to us.
Why would NASA lie?
And there's a reason, and
why
I can sit
wouldn't
here
they,
and tell you,
Brian?
but you guys don't want to hear it.
Hold on.
couldn't they?
So I don't want to talk
Can you give
about
us the Cliff Notes?
The Cliff Notes are,
Have you studied any kind of a...
He doesn't need to,
from-
B. Let's hear just a few of it.
the goal has always been for the most powerful emperors is a one world government.
And just when Joe thought Eddie couldn't top his wild claims, Eddie confidently declared that Ronald Reagan openly discussed staging a fake alien invasion at the UN. Joe immediately called Eddie out, insisting Reagan never said anything remotely like that. Eddie doubled down, leaving Joe visibly frustrated.
And back when I used to believe in UFOs, but before I figured out that UFOs they want us to believe in UFOs. They're preparing us for a fake alien invasion. That's always been the plan. A one world government. The only way to
freak
do
out.
it is to get us to embrace it. And the only way to embrace it is from an alien attack. Ronald Reagan talked about it many times at the UN.
At this point, Eddie started going after the Vatican, claiming that they secretly control all the information about space. He said they own the largest telescope on Earth called Lucifer, as if that somehow proves space is fake. Joe immediately interrupted him, openly mocking Eddie's theory by pointing out that the largest telescopes are actually in Chile and Hawaii, not the Vatican.
He's talking about like
Do you
it's
think that
time.
means the space is fake?
Yes.
No. When people ask me, why would they fake space? It's always been about a fake alien attack. You can't have a fake alien attack.
I've never heard a politician ever talk
You can't
about
have a fake alien attack
though.
without space.
But I've never heard a politician
You
talk
have to have
about
space first. So they always, you know who promoted space more than anybody?
Joe quickly refuted Eddie's wild Vatican telescope claim, clearly irritated at having to debunk something so obviously incorrect. Eddie kept insisting, though, causing Joe to roll his eyes and dismiss Eddie's idea as nothing but misinformation.
So when people ask me, why would they fake all this?
Well, I don't think that's the biggest telescope,
This
Eddie.
is just a crazy theory.
It certainly is.
We're
Now,
talking
I've
a
never
theory.
heard-
Here's
It's
the
funny.
thing.
It's a funny theory.
But Eddie, these new Chile Very Large Array telescopes that they're creating are gigantic, and they
These
take
guys
over
know.
enormous
Hey,
pieces of
listen,
land.
listen.
Eddie wasn't done yet, though. He started ranting about how a very large telescope array in Chile never got built, implying it was another layer of the big lie. Joe shot this down immediately, reminding Eddie that he personally watched documentaries showing its actual construction. Eddie, unfazed by reality, kept pushing his bizarre narrative.
None of that came.
What are you talking about?
None
I
of
think
that shit came.
is that
They
up?
said,
Is the very large array up yet? Nope,
It's a very
not up.
large telescope. It's
But I
all-
know they
all
have
images-
they have them in Hawaii. What's
Isn't
that?
it weird? Isn't it weird that every space documentary, all the series, I had them all, Joe had them all, we watch them all the time.
Just when things seemed like they couldn't get any crazier, Eddie then started insisting that every single space documentary is fake, nothing but CGI and cartoons. Joe had finally heard enough and directly confronted Eddie, sarcastically asking if Eddie really believed everything about space was computer-generated imagery.
We'd watch this documentary after documentary. Morgan Freeman got the universe. We had all that shit. I DVR'd all that shit. Anything that said space.
Will Smith
I
has
was ball. I thought I was better than people because I knew so much about space. And every now and then I'd watch all that and wonder what. This is all cartoons.
Eddie, why not?
This is all
hold on a
cartoons.
second.
And then I go, okay, whatever. And then I'd keep watching.
Eddie doubled down even more passionately, claiming mainstream documentaries were literally programming our minds about space. Joe interrupted Eddie mid-sentence, openly annoyed, asking how Eddie could dismiss actual scientific evidence so easily in favor of bizarre conspiracies.
And everyone watches that. They believe it. The narration is all programming. What's above us and what we're on, we're being lied to. Once you go flat, you never go back. Listen,
This is a campaign.
Listen, they're lying to us about everything,
Yes.
dude.
Who is they, though?
It's not about.
Who are
it's not
they,
about
Eddie?
belief.
Eddie,
Here's
who's
the one
they?
thing. This is the one thing I want to say.
Okay.
It's like.
Eddie then delivered the ultimate line, dramatically saying, "Once you go flat, you never go back." Joe looked visibly frustrated as Eddie seemed genuinely convinced that the only reason Joe wasn't a believer was that he hadn't yet awakened.
It's not that we believe something ridiculous and you don't believe it. We're gullible. We're gullible. We believe some weird about the flat earth. We believe some weird. You don't believe it, you're smart. It's not about that. It's about we actually don't know what we're on, and we always say that. We don't know, but based on all the that we got by the mainstream, we don't believe that.
Joe, clearly done with Eddie's nonsense, challenged him directly. He asked how Eddie could completely reject established scientific consensus about space while fully trusting technology developed from the same scientific methods, like cell phones. Eddie stumbled over his words, unable to explain his selective skepticism.
And we don't believe any of that
Yeah,
shit.
but you use
So
that.
we don't
wait,
believe that
Eddie,
shit.
you use that microphone. You use a cell phone, right?
It's science.
Hold on.
I believe in it.
That's science.
I believe in it.
Okay, why do
I
you believe in
it.
that? And
because
why don't
I
you
don't
believe?
need a study. I don't need to read something to verify.
But you
It's
benefit
not
from
scientism
science.
I experience
You
it.
benefit from
I know
science
it.
every day.
I know. I love
listen,
So why wouldn't you
I
believe
wanna-
that
I
those?
think we gotta cut.
Joe pressed even further, pointing out the blatant contradiction. Eddie willingly trusted science whenever it was convenient for him, like using phones or technology, but dismissed science entirely whenever it disproved his wild conspiracy theories. Eddie was clearly cornered, unable to respond logically.
It's 10 o'clock.
Man, we gotta get out of here.
It's 10 o'clock.
Come see me in Vancouver at the Vogue Theater and in Salt Lake City at Wise Guys March 1 and 2.
I love science too.
I love science. I don't want to fight. I want to laugh about it. I'm an idiot. I believe in flat earth. I'm crazy. That's all you need to know.
But even then, he kept rambling on about the same thing. However, even this is nothing in front of what this next guest said. Number 4, Arian Foster and Joe Rogan on moon landing. So in this episode, Arian Foster decided to question Joe Rogan on his infamous moon landing denial. What Joe revealed next was both shocking and confusing. Joe Rogan kicks things off by casually stating that he's seen plenty of documentaries, and he openly admits he's confused because some footage looks clearly fake, doctored, and suspicious. Joe even points out astronauts looking like they're literally bouncing on trampolines and moving differently across multiple moon landing videos. To Joe, these inconsistencies seemed obvious and suspicious enough to raise doubts.
Absolutely. I don't know enough about astrophysics, about space travel, about the science that's, the work that's been done, about how to get a rocket to the moon and back. I definitely don't know enough.
It's rocket science.
And I've looked at a lot of very compelling documentaries that explain why they think it was hoaxed.
Joe didn't stop there. He doubled down by describing how NASA once blatantly used a fake photo of astronaut Michael Collins performing a spacewalk. NASA had simply flipped a training photo upside down and blacked out the background. Joe seems convinced if NASA could fake one photo, they could fake a bunch more without much hassle.
Another possibility, which has been shown to be true, is that some of the stuff that they passed off as being legitimate photographs of space travel was actually test runs where they blacked out the background and pretended that they were in space. And there's one really clear example of this. It's Michael Collins. Michael Collins, who was the guy who was aboard Apollo 11.
He then casually admitted that NASA definitely recorded fake training exercises, making it easy to pass those off as authentic moon footage. At this point, you could sense Joe was completely sold on the possibility that NASA might have faked more than just a photo or two.
Does that mean that they faked the moon landing? No, but it means that people fake things. So you got to be really objective and looking at that.
Right.
Okay, so people say fake things. They definitely filmed a lot of the training exercises that they did of the moon landing.
Right.
They filmed a lot of. They definitely did. If that has already been proven.
Then surprisingly, Joe showed some self-awareness. He confessed that he previously believed in the moon landing hoax because he desperately wanted it to be true. Essentially, Joe admitted he might have fooled himself into believing NASA tricked the entire world simply because he was too excited by the conspiracy itself.
Some of the stuff that they filmed, they made out to look like they were on the moon when they were not. But does that mean they didn't go to the moon? No, it doesn't. And so when I was saying it proves that they didn't go to the moon, my critique of myself is that I didn't look at it objectively.
But even after this confession, Joe couldn't resist slipping right back into conspiracy land. He suggested multiple theories explaining why NASA might have provided fake footage, including potential radiation damage to the original film, technical difficulties, or even outright deception.
Because there's a lot of evidence that shows it to be fake, or have I seen a lot of evidence that looks fake? And does that mean that they didn't go to the moon? Right. No, it doesn't. There's a bunch of different possibilities. There's a ton of different possibilities. There's also the possibility that whatever photographs they took can get severely damaged in the radiation of space, and that it was really difficult to do.
Right.
Things got even stranger when Joe brought up the disturbing fact that humans haven't returned to the moon since the Apollo missions. To Joe, it seemed absurd and suspiciously convenient that we easily traveled to the moon and back multiple times decades ago, but now can barely reach orbit. He kept emphasizing how strange it was that modern technology hadn't taken us beyond near-Earth orbit again.
The moon landing is one of the best ones, and this is why it's so attractive. Between 1969 and 1973,
You still on the fence about this, huh?
No, I'm not at all.
Okay.
But I'm on the I don't know fence. That's where I live.
All right.
But between
Got
that
a lot
time,
of facts on this side. I'm with you though.
they sent, I think it was 7 missions. 6 of them were successful. The only one that wasn't successful was Apollo 13, right?
And just when you thought he was done, Joe dropped another bombshell by talking about moon rocks gifted by Apollo astronauts. It turns out some of these supposed moon rocks were just petrified wood. Joe presented this as proof that NASA was pulling some serious tricks, implying that the entire mission might have been a massive fraud.
The best one to get excited about. They lost all the data.
I see, cause like I see, like, you know, you go down the YouTube wormhole. You know, you start watching Barry Sanders highlights, and then all of a sudden I'm looking at JFK being Michael Jackson or something. But like, I just don't see what the motive would be.
If that wasn't enough, Joe even referenced Bill Clinton, suggesting the former president might secretly doubt the moon landing. According to Joe, Clinton wrote that after 8 years in the White House, he wondered if skeptics claiming the moon landing was fake were actually onto something. Joe seemed genuinely intrigued by the idea of a president questioning NASA.
They can make anything look real. And he said, this is a quote in Bill Clinton's book. He said, back then I thought that guy was a quack. But after, or a crank, whatever, crazy person. But after 8 years in the White House, I was wondering if he wasn't ahead of his time.
Oh, wow.
This is a guy that was the president of the United States. And he's talking specifically.
By the end of the conversation, Joe openly admitted he used to fully believe in the moon landing conspiracy theory. He confessed that he passionately argued about NASA's deceit, despite knowing very little about astrophysics or space travel. He called the moon landing conspiracy the best one to get excited about, and admitted it had captivated him simply because of how plausible and dramatic it seemed.
I wondered after 8 years in the White House if that guy wasn't ahead of his time.
Causation, correlation.
Yeah. No, look, could be.
Yeah.
Could be 100%. It could be just a good story.
But I think that's the thing about conspiracy theories is like they lead you on all these dead end chases.
Oh yeah. So to answer the long answer of your question, that's where I stood on this whole moon landing thing. That's why I came around to thinking it a different way.
But even this theory won't sound as crazy to you when you hear about this next theory, number 3, Tony Hinchcliffe and Joe Rogan on JFK and secret societies. Let's dive into when Tony Hinchcliffe came to Joe Rogan's podcast, and they started digging into one of America's most notorious conspiracies, the JFK assassination. Tony immediately suggested that if he had access to a time machine, he'd go straight to the grassy knoll to see who really pulled the trigger.
I'd go back to the I'd be on the grassy knoll that day of JFK.
Oh yeah, that's a good one too.
That's a good one too.
Would you be on the grassy knoll or would you be in the book depository? See, if you're in the book depository, then you know that Lee Harvey Oswald isn't there.
I think he may have even been there. I think he may have even been firing, but I don't believe that he was the only one.
I'm with you. That's exactly what I think. I think he could have been in on it.
Then Joe jumps right in, saying Lee Harvey Oswald might have been involved, but there's just no way he acted alone. Rogan points out how suspicious Oswald's reaction was when he got arrested, saying, "I'm just a patsy, exactly what you'd say if you were set up for something shady."
Maybe he didn't even fire it.
Right.
But when he said that he was a patsy, you know, the way he said it, when he got arrested, he said, "I'm just a patsy." That's like a guy who knew he was going to get in trouble for something.
Yeah.
That's not like a regular guy. He was not a regular guy. They easily could have talked him into doing something up.
Joe then argues Oswald probably wasn't shocked at all about being arrested, almost as if he knew it was coming. Joe and Tony both agree the whole situation just screams setup. It almost sounds too perfectly staged to be real.
And then they did something as well and blamed it all on him, and they had him set up for it.
Yeah.
He seemed like a wacky dude.
Someone that did that and made that shot and really wanted him dead would own it. Quite the opposite. At that point, you're not trying to not go to prison.
Well, maybe he is. but it didn't seem like it.
Rogan then drops the craziest twist yet, mentioning Jack Ruby casually running up and shooting Oswald, suggesting he was hired just to silence him. It's insane, but the idea of this random nightclub owner turning assassin right after the president's death seems way too convenient.
He wanted to do something about the Federal Reserve. There was a lot of things that he wanted to do, apparently. Maybe it was the CIA. I think it was the CIA. He was trying to disband one of those. But he had a disdain for secrecy and secret societies, like that. There was a lot of these like Skull and Bones type things that like George W. Bush was in, or Herbert Walker Bush, rather, his dad. Was George G.W. in Skull and Bones too?
The conversation spirals deeper as Joe and Tony start discussing how hated JFK was by powerful groups, including military and intelligence agencies. Joe mentions the CIA, the Federal Reserve, and secret societies like Skull and Bones as possible culprits behind JFK's death. Imagine a bunch of secret society members plotting together. That's like something out of a movie.
Yeah, I mean, all that wacky. Like, what are you doing? You dressing up like a druid? What are you doing? Are you burning an effigy? A lot of people thought that was all fake until Alex Jones and John Ronson was with him, right? Yes.
I don't know who was with him, actually.
Yes, I'm pretty sure. Google that. Make sure I'm right.
Joe gets really fired up when talking about how JFK despised secret societies. He highlights how groups like Skull and Bones, which even presidents have joined, are so weird. He describes them sarcastically, laughing at the thought of grown men dressed in robes, burning effigies, or doing whatever else these creepy societies supposedly do.
Just imagine being a guy who's worth $1 billion, and this is what you do for fun. You're going to get together with Mike and Harry, who runs Microsoft, and you're all going to go and pretend you're burning something. Like, look at this.
But did they become billionaires and then do this, or is it a chicken and the egg?
That's the question. That's what people think, like, about the elites, right? People think they're, well, and in some families.
Then Rogan hits us with a bombshell, Bohemian Grove. He tells Tony about Alex Jones sneaking into this secret event full of influential elites dressed in druid outfits, sacrificing effigies to an owl god. The whole thing sounds completely ridiculous, but Joe insists it's real.
It is true.
I mean, if these people are all meeting up once a year to burn a stack of hay shaped like a lady, why wouldn't they invest in each other and,
Of course.
They're all bankers and successful.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing about Skull and Bones, is that they all had something on you. Everyone knew something, because you all sucked everybody's dick and took Polaroids of it and dressed up like a munchkin,
As they watch Alex Jones's grainy video footage, Rogan can't help but laugh at the absurdity. Imagine billionaires, politicians, and famous artists getting together for something straight out of a bad horror movie.
You ever heard the Kennedy speech about secret societies? It's creepy. When it turns out that he eventually gets murdered, it's creepy.
Did you watch
The Irishman? Hey.
No,
Jinx?
didn't see it.
No.
Good? It's
Spoiler
about,
alert.
yeah.
Half the movie's about that.
Yeah, no, it is good. So many people told me that they hated it that I was shocked when I watched it, and it was good.
Pull up Kennedy's speech about secret societies.
Then they question if these secret society meetings aren't just about weird rituals, but about networking too. After all, powerful people gathering secretly must mean shady business deals, right? It almost seems too simple, yet oddly believable.
Because Kennedy had this speech about secret societies that many people have speculated had to do with the CIA or had to do with...
The movie brings up an angle I didn't know, is that he hired his brother to become the attorney general, and he stared going after...
Yes, the
them.
mob.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, he did right after they helped him get into office. Well, here's the other thing about the Kennedys. They were drug dealers. 100%.
Bootleggers.
Joe then hilariously speculates that maybe the entire Skull and Bones Club started because some alpha guy wanted to trick everyone into weird rituals for his own amusement. The scenario Joe paints sounds so absurd, yet weirdly plausible. Elite people blackmailing each other to keep secrets.
Yes, they were selling whiskey or moonshine or whatever the it
the
was.
movie says the dad was too old at the time to get a hold of the sons. Like, they were trying to get old man Kennedy to tell his kids, crack the whip, get him in line, but they couldn't get to him because he was just staring out windows.
Oh, he was
about to
done
die.
already. Yeah, that makes sense.
Um,
Listen, man, they were illegal alcohol salesmen. They made a bunch of money.
Rogan sarcastically continues, imagining this hypothetical group's initiation rituals involving compromising photos and blackmail to ensure silence. You can't help but laugh at the image of influential figures being forced into ridiculous scenarios just to keep quiet.
Selling alcohol illegally, just like a drug dealer does. Same thing. The fact that those folks went on to become this incredibly powerful family, and then 2 brothers get publicly assassinated. Hey, man, 2 of them. The fact that you can keep guys around.
Things take a more serious turn when Rogan plays JFK's chilling speech about secret societies. Kennedy warned against covert operations, censorship, and hidden conspiracies, all incredibly eerie given his assassination shortly afterward.
But listen, play that. Play that Kennedy speech.
It's actually like a 20-minute speech. This is just, I think this is the main highlight we're hopefully looking for.
Yeah, let me hear
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment.
Listening to JFK's own words, Tony and Joe are visibly unsettled. JFK's direct criticism of secret societies and covert groups seems almost prophetic, given what later happened to him.
If our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low.
Then Rogan emphasizes how creepy JFK's speech sounds in hindsight. JFK was openly attacking powerful groups like the CIA, and soon after, he was dead. Joe can't hide his skepticism about this coincidence.
Civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy.
Joe finally says if anyone else had said what JFK did, they'd be dismissed as a crazy conspiracy theorist immediately. But because it's Kennedy himself, it's downright chilling.
That relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources.
This entire conversation leaves Joe and Tony, and probably anyone listening, wondering what really happened. The JFK assassination remains a conspiracy classic, mostly because it's genuinely hard to believe the official story.
If someone else was saying that instead of Kennedy, if someone else is saying those very things in front of you about how they have an open budget, their findings are all concealed, they're a tightly knit group that combines the military and science and all, you'd be like, what? Yeah. Are you on Sam Tripoli's podcast this week? Are you on Tinfoil Hat?
Ultimately, Rogan suggests Kennedy's assassination was likely tied directly to his open challenge against powerful groups. JFK wanted transparency, no more hidden agendas, and it might have cost him his life.
You know, what are you doing with this wacky thought?
What do you think
wouldn't think that would be the president. He's talking about secret society. He's talking about the military-industrial complex. He's talking about all the gears that are in play, all the pieces that are in play that are making money and causing war and deciding what information people should and shouldn't have and what overreach, they're going to put into action.
And if you think this was insane, wait until you hear this next theory, which actually sounds way more ridiculous than this one. Number 2, Sason Sands, Lenville Logan, and Joe Rogan on UFOs. This theory started when Joe Rogan hosted Sason Sands and Lenville Logan, who brought one of the wildest UFO stories to his podcast. Right off the bat, Sason starts talking about a strange video recorded by the military at Nellis Test Range, Nevada, showing an object moving so erratically that even automated tracking systems couldn't lock onto it.
Right now, yeah.
What would he search?
Search for, let me think, Nellis Test Range UFO 1994.
Dun, dun, dun. Who filmed this?
This was filmed by the operators on the range because we're putting these pilots in a risky situation by playing war with them, but we're training them.
The footage looks like your typical grainy UFO video, but according to Sands, this isn't just shaky hands holding a camera. It's military-grade tracking equipment that's struggling to follow this mysterious craft. Honestly, if your super advanced automated system is baffled, maybe it's aliens or, just a glitch in the matrix.
So
This is it right here?
Yes. So this video is being taken by one of these cameras that's up on the range. And along the bottom, you see that this is also trying to lock on to the craft so it can, follow it as it goes in and out, because this is the kind of way that you want to track if there's a craft that is having problems. And
This is moving very erratically.
Right.
Then things get weirder. Sands claims the operators were confused, openly wondering what they're looking at. Imagine spending your day watching highly trained military personnel stare at screens, utterly clueless.
This tracking, is this manual or is this like some sort of an automated system?
It's an automated system.
So the automated system is having a hard time
locking on
to it.
Yeah, if it locks on, you'll see a big spike, and that means that it finally locks on. Right now it's trying to, but something is stopping it from locking on, and they think it was the craft.
It's moving like crazy.
Joe Rogan jumps in, genuinely curious about whether this was an automated system losing its mind over this object. And yes, it was. So here we have automated tech, trusted to track jets and missiles.
And they were all talking about this UFO. So we go in there, and there's the video operator. He has us all write our names down, whether we were there and saw it the first week or not. Then he makes us all sit down and watch that video. And he says, "Do you know what this is?" And we're like, "No." And then he just said, "Okay, thank you." And then we, after everybody that was there saw it and wrote their name down, we were allowed to leave. And that was all that was required. And
Sands explains how everyone on the range was gathered afterward to watch this same video and confirm they had no idea what they were seeing.
And about a mile, half a mile to a mile down that road, it's all dirt road up, by the way, there's this guy. It looks like he's wearing a uniform like we are. He got battle dress uniform on. So he sees us, and he starts to look like he's running, and he's got this really weird run, like his arms are kind of flailing behind him. It's like he was running against the hurricane wind.
Now Sands gets into the juicy part of the story, seeing a mysterious figure running around the range. And by mysterious, I mean this guy was apparently running against invisible hurricane winds, looking hypothermic with weird bluish skin.
I get my jacket most of the way off. He's right there at the corner of the front of the car. And
so he looks pale? Is that what you're saying?
He looked like an albino with a very bluish kind of undertone. If you could imagine,
So you're assuming you're immediately associating that with he's freezing.
Yeah, because that's all I could equate it to.
Right.
And then as I'm starting to open my door,
the details get stranger. Joe Rogan tries making sense of it by suggesting the figure was simply freezing, but Sands quickly shuts that down. Apparently, freezing doesn't explain why someone has no ears and eyes double the size of normal.
Step out onto the roadway, and this guy screams that he's got no ears. And I just thinking it's really rude. And then I close the door, and I look up, and he's got no freaking ears, and his eyes are twice as big. And I just am like, yeah, what the hell did I just walk into? This guy's not from around
here.
How
far away from him are you?
Probably from me to
just a few feet.
Yeah, just talking distance.
Okay.
And I'm starting to freak out.
Then comes the moment where someone literally screams, "He's got no ears." Imagine your first reaction upon seeing an alien is screaming about his lack of ears, not his massive eyes or bluish glow. Priorities, people.
He's saying words, but it doesn't sound like anything I've heard before.
But you're understanding what he's saying.
But I'm understanding. So I know there's a telepathic thing going on here, and it calms me down at the same time because I'm having to respond to him. And he's like, "Hello, I'm having trouble with my craft. I need some repair material. Do you know where I could find some tritium?" And this is what he's talking to me about. And I'm like, "You mean titanium?" Because I didn't know anything about tritium at the time.
Sands claims this alien starts communicating telepathically, casually asking for tritium to repair his spaceship. At this point, even Joe has to pause as if wondering if tritium, a radioactive isotope used in nuclear bombs, is really something ET casually borrows from humans.
You can see for days in the desert, but I pointed towards the mountain range and I said, "Dreamland's just over there." And this wave of emotion hit me like disgust, like I am not going to talk to those barbarians and murderers. And
Wow, so he was saying that to you, like his reaction to going to the military base was...
Exactly, yeah. He did not like it. He said, "I am not going to talk to those people."
When Sands tries sending the alien to Area 51, Dreamland, our telepathic friend calls humans there barbarians and murderers, so apparently aliens have moral judgments on human military bases now.
Well, that's what I've had a lot of friends. There's analysts also that were on the top secret network that were trying to help me understand what material.
We were throwing everything at him. We're like, "Is it this? Is it this?" And he's
and then
like,
finally,
"No."
that's the one. When they hit tritium, I was like, "That's what it was." That's what he said.
And what is tritium?
It's a type of, well, can he bring it up on the...
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because it should pop up